Hi, my name is Sean Cecil, and today I'm going to teach you guys about the 4 different kinds of internal work that you can do to help your mindset, your triggers, and the things that are holding you back from creating the career that you deserve. Hey everyone. So a couple weeks ago, I got a question in a comment on one of my videos about what is this internal work that you speak of? We were talking about dealing with some of the triggers and some of the unproductive conditioning that holds people back from doing the things that they know will make their life better, or that prevents them from understanding themselves and discovering their purpose and having that clarity. The person in the comments said, well, you haven't explained what this internal work is. And my response to her was, that's the subject of a whole nother video, which is what I want to bring to you guys today, because it is really important. The internal work, the mindset work, the heart set work, the dissolving stress, all this kind of stuff is often more powerful in people's lives than the external work of how do you put together a resume or how do you put together a business plan or any of that kind of stuff. So you can really divide the internal work into 4 different schools. So the 2 most common schools are the NLP-based school and the spirituality or positive psychology-based school. So the NLP-based school is what Tony Robbins has made really famous. He built his career on it, and it's at the core of what he and his organization do. And it's a very useful school. There are a lot of wonderful skills in there, but for many people, it only goes so far. The NLP-based school has a lot of different tools that are, rely on how the mind processes information, things like whether people represent things to themselves visually or auditorily or kinesthetically. But at its core, most of the coaching from the NLP-based school is based around the idea of changing beliefs and of getting people into an empowered and resourceful state so that they'll go take action. And a lot of it highlights conflicts between what they want and what they believe. A lot of it highlights things like, if somebody doesn't believe that they have the capability to do something, that they just need to change that belief. The unfortunate problem with that is that many people don't know how to change that belief. And the NLP-based school very often will rely on trying to change a belief by force of will. And especially for people who are very interested with data, with facts, who like to think things over, changing beliefs by force of will is not something that comes naturally to them. It's not something that feels right to them. And sometimes it can even feel out of integrity. And so those people will tend to enter into that kind of school and then come out feeling really disappointed, feeling really let down, and it can limit the results that they get. Now, the second really common form in the personal development world is the spirituality or positive psychology school. So this is going to be stuff like the law of attraction. This is going to be stuff like focus on what makes you happy. Just learn to flow with it. It's cultivating gratitude. It's cultivating motivation. It's cultivating feeling good, whatever feels good. Don't focus on the bad, just focus on the good. And yes, that does play a role. And yes, it does make a difference to keep yourself in a high state. It does make a difference to keep yourself in a positive, enthusiastic state. The problem with it is that, again, it can only go so far. If you hide from the things that are really bothering you, if you just cover them up and don't address them, then they move from your conscious into your subconscious and even into your unconscious, and then they'll continue to sabotage you. This is a phenomenon that I call spiritual bypass, where people will talk as if they are enlightened. They'll talk as if they're spiritual. They understand. They're totally at peace with things, but at their deepest core, they're not. And they delude themselves into thinking that they are, and it causes this disconnect. And you'll see these kinds of people, they'll be super optimistic about a lot of things, but then in private, they'll have a lot of doubts. They'll find themselves not taking action. They won't know why, because they've hidden it from themselves. So again, just like the NLP-based school, there are a lot of powerful tools, but there are limitations, as with all things. Now, the third school out of the 4 schools of internal work is the conventional psychotherapeutic school. This school is very useful when it comes to things like dealing with emotional trauma, so PTSD or DTD, which is developmental trauma disorder, which primarily refers to childhood things where, for example, if somebody's raised in a hostile or neglectful or abusive household, or where there's role reversal, where they have to take care of their parents, there are a lot of really fantastic techniques that have been developed over the decades. Unfortunately, most therapists actually don't go into the best techniques. Some of the best techniques that I've seen are EMDR or PBSP, which is Pace Avoidance System Psychomotor. Great book on the subject is The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. It's a great overview of emotional trauma and some of the forefront of how to help people overcome that. Unfortunately, most people's experience with the psychotherapeutic school is just talk therapists, where people go in, they talk to somebody, and there's not, unfortunately, a lot of training in those advanced methodologies that's required to become a therapist. And so most people can go to therapy for years. They can go every week for 5 years, for 10 years, and they don't actually get to what's really going on, and they don't actually solve the problem. I had a client who had been going to therapy for 30 years and had not managed to overcome a certain set of blocks that we were able to overcome in less than 3 months, because we were able to get to the core in a different way and use more powerful methods than just simple talk therapy, which very often is just having another human being to speak to who's coming from some kind of compassionate and neutral place. And this brings us to the final school of the internal work, which is something that I call psychohacking. It's a system that I've developed from many studies in a lot of different schools, from a lot of different people, that is fundamentally different from each of the other 3 schools. Unlike the NLP-based school, it does not rely on force of will to change beliefs. Unlike the spirituality and positive psychology school, it does involve confronting the bad. It does involve bringing it to the light. And unlike the therapy-based school, it doesn't involve just going in and repeatedly desensitizing yourself to stuff or just talking it over with somebody, but actually uses innovative techniques to, for example, dissolve stress by triggering a humor reaction, or getting past the terror of fear by taking it out of the shadow of the unknown. Because every stress works differently. Every kind of self-sabotage works differently. Every trick that your mind uses to keep you stuck works differently. And the key to psychohacking is to bring it into the light and deconstruct it individually based on that particular pattern that's repeated across all kinds of people. So, for example, one thing that the mind will do, everybody, is associations. It will tie one thing to another thing that may or may not be relevant. And if you have an association that's holding you back, the solution isn't to just ignore it. The solution isn't to just, look at it and look at it and look at it. The solution is to reassociate to something different, because the mind is fundamentally wired where it's really hard to break old associations, but it's really easy to create new ones. And if you run down the neural pathways of the new association, the old one atrophies naturally. So things like that work with how the mind works, that don't require the application of mental or psychological force, are generally the most effective ways to prevent something in the mind from holding you back. It's the most effective way to rewire the neural pathways. I'm not saying that all the other schools aren't valuable. As I said, there are wonderful tools in the NLP-based school, in the spirituality and positive psychology-based school, and in the psychotherapeutic school. But the real solution to do the work that you need to do if you're going to raise yourself up and you're going to become a better version of yourself is to incorporate all 4 types of work. It's just like if you're going to go and you're going to build something. You want to make sure you've got all the tools. You don't want to show up without a hammer. You don't want to show up without a screwdriver. You don't want to show up without a saw. You want to have all of them. And generally where I've found people who have really struggled, it's because they insist on using 1 tool or 2 tools, and they don't realize that they're missing some of the tools that they need in order to do the work on their mindset, on their heart set, on how they view the world, and on the things in their subconscious that are affecting how they interact with other people, how they interact with themselves. And ultimately, those are the things that ultimately shape your career. As Gandhi said, you must watch your thoughts, because your thoughts become your beliefs. Your beliefs will become your actions. Your actions will become your habits, and your habits will determine your destiny. So if you guys are interested in learning more about psychohacking, then I do have a presentation that does discuss it and many other aspects of the journey towards career freedom. And you can go access that presentation at www.oculusinstitute.com/workshop. It's totally free. You can go through it. We'll talk about some of the different things that psychohacking will help with. We'll give a little bit more detail, and it will also give detail about the rest of the journey. You can also go and join the Science of Career Freedom. We talk about that kind of stuff all the time. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys on the other side, and I'm wishing you the best. Have a wonderful day.